Councilmember Ewing, can you hear us? Councilmember Ewing, can you hear me? Would there be a reason why? Let's see if he needs to unmute. Yeah. Councilmember Ewing, can you unmute yourself? Let me know if you can hear me.
You're supposed to just walk in if you listen to talk about anything tonight. You have to fill out a green form if it's general. And if it's about the public hearing on the STRs, it's the blue form. Color code.
Just remind people to, yeah.
Can you call Steve Ewing? Yep. Can we ask everyone to turn their mic on, please?
We all set?
Yes.
Okay, we'll wait a minute or two. Getting back in.
Councilmember Ewing, I can see you. Can you hear us? Yeah.
Hey, Steve, can you hear us? You got us? Steve?
Troy, can you give him a call? Try to troubleshoot with him. Troy's gonna give him a call, see if we can get him.
System, so you gotta get used to it.
Got a nice little promo for Costco.
Yeah, I see that. Did our packet come from county or?
Never good.
Oh,
Hey,
Okay, I
Steve,
think we're
you
good.
got us?
sorry, when was that sent?
You got us? Can we hear you?
No.
Yeah, I can hear you and I saw your thumb.
Good.
All right. Let's get going. This is a little past 6 o'clock. Let's kick off this meeting. It's going to be a city council meeting, Lake Stevens City Council. It's April 11th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And we are down in the mill at 1808 Main Street, Lake Stevens. It's a hybrid meeting. We have folks in person downtown and as well as online. This meeting will be recorded and later published on the Lake Stevens City YouTube channel for your perusal. Great. So with that, I would ask everyone to stand with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, great. Council President, Clerk Chung, can we get a roll call?
Councilmember Daughtry,
Present.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
Present.
Councilmember Donahue,
Present.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Present.
Councilmember Jorstad,
Present.
Councilmember Ewing, Councilmember Taggett.
Present.
All right, great. We got the whole team back. It's been a couple weeks. Team in the same room. Perfect. With that, let's get an approval of the agenda.
Excellent. We have an agenda before us. Can I hear a motion to approve?
Move to approve the agenda as submitted. Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You have an agenda.
All right, cool.
Opposition from the floor.
And that's a nay.
All right, so with that, we've got some introductions, new employee introductions I'm excited about. Troy, you have the floor.
All right, thank you, council and citizens. My name is Troy Stevens. I'm the IT director for the City of Lake Stevens, and I'm here to introduce two new employees that are joining our team. We're very excited to have these people join us. We've been down for quite some time, and so they're jumping right into the fire. So first, I'll introduce Vanessa. She is our new application analyst, and she's a local to this area. She's born and raised in Arlington. She comes from a large family. She's worked in retail for over 8 years, where she was introduced into the lean process, Six Sigma, where we're hoping to utilize those skills. She recently graduated from the University of Washington with a bachelor's degree in computer science and data science. She's interned at Amazon, kind of working on some of these project manager. She's an animal enthusiast, has 3 dogs, 2 cats, 2 bunnies, a small hobby farm. And in her spare time, she enjoys hiking, camping, kayaking, paddleboard, garden, and reading. So hold off a little bit and I'll introduce Alex. So Alex is our support analyst, and he's a local as well. Both of them live in the area, which is great. So they're really close to respond to our needs. He has about 13 years in IT. Most recently, he worked as a system administrator for a managed service provider, handling small, medium-sized businesses. So that's good. He has a passion for animals as well and has volunteered for PAWS as a volunteer. He enjoys riding his new motorcycle, which is awesome. And he comes from an IT family, actually. He's got both his parents are in IT, so that's awesome. So they just talk geek stuff all day long. So anyways, with that, I'd like to introduce you to the council.
That's it. See you again.
All right, thank you, council.
Yeah, so real good hires on that. Good work on finding those 2, Troy. I noticed that we've been here about 2 weeks now, and all I've seen is pushed up sleeves and lots of IT cool. I can only imagine Thanksgiving. Yeah. All right, perfect. Let's move on to citizens' comments, and I have one citizens' comment. Surprisingly, all the others are for the public hearing for the STR. But I have one public, general citizens' comments. So what we do on citizens' comments is we provide 3 minutes to address the council on whatever subject you want under the general comments. And we ask first online, is there anybody online who has comments outside the STR?
So I do have a hand up, the hand's been up for a while, so I'm gonna go ahead and let them in and see. The name is Saffron. Saffron, you have 3 minutes to address the council, and this is.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Saffron Fellow. I live on 99th Avenue Northeast. A while ago, I had asked for sidewalks because the street was very dangerous. You guys put on some barriers with poles, which I think is a really great cost-effective way to solve the issue. I just want to say my sincere thank you for putting these barriers up. The walkway has been feeling a lot more safe for me and my children. And that's pretty much all I have to say. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, Saffron, you can come talk to us anytime.
So again, if you want to address the council and you're on Zoom, please raise your digital hand so I can let you in. Oh, we got another one. Let me hold Jim in. All right, Jim, you're here with the council. You have 3 minutes to talk about whatever you'd like, as long as it's not regarding the public hearing. Jim, can you unmute yourself?
First of all, this isn't Jim, it's his wife Kirsten. And I'm just trying to verify that I'm actually hooked in and we'll have an opportunity to talk when it's the appropriate time.
Okay, were you wanting to speak regarding the public hearing?
Just for the short-term rentals.
Okay, great. We'll pull you in then.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Don't think so. Let me just check one more time. No.
Okay, great. And then I have in the audience, Aaron Van Reed. All right, Van Reed, that's right.
Good evening, council. Good evening, citizens. My name is Erin Van Rye. I live on 9910 North Davies Road, and I'm here to pay a compliment to the Public Works Department for cleaning up the side walkway along North Davies Road. It has been overgrown for years and years and years. The ivy was almost to the road, and now it's clear. Also worked with the mayor about a year ago to put up the similar standard thingies that Saffron was talking about. So again, I want to thank you for taking pride in our city and cleaning up that walkway. So I feel safer walking with my husband and my dog. So thank you for that.
Great. Thank you, Aaron. Okay, I do not have anybody else in the audience. So with that, let's go to council business. Council.
Great, thank you. Let's start virtually and go to Councilmember Ewing.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Tagent.
Yeah, I believe a week or so ago, our police department had a good drug bust and took some bad stuff off the streets. It's just, I think that's what happens when we give our police department the staff and the tools they need. We get stuff like this off, and it's another one for the good guys. And it's great to have people come and talk about successes that we're having in the city today. So that was good to hear two of you come out and talk about good things we've got going in the city. Great job for Lake Stevens Police Department.
Thank you. Councilwoman Dickinson.
I attended the Historic Society meeting last Wednesday and much was discussed, particularly about the Grimm House. The building needs electricity, and thankfully, with the help from our Public Works Director, Aaron Halverson, what is in here again? Oh my goodness. There is some progress regarding the fence. Tough work and it isn't cheap. Of course, once the fence is in, it will need to be painted. The porch needs painting as well. The Lake Stevens Film Festival came to that meeting also. And they told the board about a plan for a film festival at Lundin Park in early August. They would like to use the story of the train engine in the lake to stimulate artwork. I attended the senior center board meeting yesterday and learned that 2 volunteers came in and cleaned up the garage, which was no small job. Movies and snacks has become a real draw. Upcoming trip to the Tulip Festival will require both the bus and the van. So many people signed up. Lunch crowds are growing, and they will have to set up more tables in the back room. That's good news. This Saturday, April 15th, the Snow Isle Libraries will present a program about Earth Day at the Senior Center. I also attended the 46th annual Kiwanis Easter egg hunt at Highland Elementary. In spite of the rain, it was a great crowd of kids. Key Club and Scout volunteers did a great job setting up. Thanks to the fire department for bringing the Easter Bunny and the fire truck too. Always a hit. I really had a great time at that event. More positivity. I love it.
Thank you. Councilman Donahue.
Nothing to report.
Thanks. Councilman Peter Sagan.
Yes, I just want to report back. We have an asset on our community that's recognized in a couple of counties now, and that's Sherwood Services. They had a benefit auction here a week ago Saturday, I believe. Very successful. And until you get involved in that group, you don't know the outreach that those folks and the impact that they have in our community. It's really quite amazing. Based right here in Lake Stevens, kind of hidden back there behind Hagen's and such, but the impact that they have on people's lives is really something to experience. So it's great to have them here.
Thank you. Councilman Daughtry.
Yeah, I did know what Councilman Peter Sagan said about them. We're talking about Sherwood Community Services, of course. And I also went to that function. It was really well attended. They raised over $130,000 that night. Councilmember Dickinson was also there with us. Can't say enough about what Sherwood does for the community. They're an awesome thing. They are now in 4 counties, as they say, 4 counties, 3 counties, 3 counties. So they're reaching out outside of our borders now, but they're doing a really good job, and I look forward to working with them for years to come. I attended Community Transit Board meeting, a couple things going on there. We have a new transit initiative at Community Transit, starting to get our ducks in a row to meet with the new Sound Transit rail line, so that we're changing what we have for commuter buses going to Seattle, bringing them back into the county and getting more service, about 40% more service locally. We're going to experience some of that here. Also in Lake Stevens, they're doing a study right now for an Uber type transit system here in Lake Stevens, just in Lake Stevens. There is a survey out about that, and there's a committee that has been put together to look at that. If you're interested in giving your input of what it would look like for you, what you would like for that to be, then please get on the survey and do that. I also went to the all-city meeting when was that? Thursday? Whenever it was, went to the all-city meeting. It was pretty impressive to see the growth of our staff, along with the growth of our city. Marcus and I have been here since 13 years ago. I think we had 30 people total as staff, and it's probably tripled on that. It was pretty impressive to see all the staff in that all-city meeting. I know they weren't all there, but to hear the directors and some of the other people giving a status to the people in the meeting, it was pretty impressive to hear how they're doing and how much they work for the city. And I was very grateful for that. Also attended the Youth Advisory Council last night. Youth Advisory Council is doing a wonderful job. They are having a little bit of trouble getting some people involved, and they're looking at better ways of doing that. Much the same as the youth, or as much the same as the Veterans Commission, having the same problem, and along with a couple of our other committees that we have today. And am I not talking loud enough? Is that better? And so if you have some time and you want to get involved with some great things that happen in the city, look into the city committees and city commissions and see if you can put some time into there. That's all I got.
Thank you. I have nothing for this evening.
All right, great reports. It's good to be back. I was away on some military duty for a couple of weeks, so it's good to be back in person with everybody, and getting back into the swing of what's going on with the staff. I want to talk a little bit about the legislative efforts that are going on this year. For the city, we had several had several priorities that we wanted to work on, and especially within the public safety realm. I'm glad that yesterday the pursuit legislation passed out of the House. It is a great step ahead of where we've been, and will help to reduce some of the chaos that we're seeing on our streets. It needs to go a little bit further, but I applaud the House for moving that forward, and hopefully the governor will sign it, which I think he will. On our other point, which is the Blake decision and reforming the Blake decision, which makes drugs legal in our state. That is not looking as well, and in fact dismal. And I'm hoping that the House can go back to what was passed out of the Senate on that, and bring some sensibility back into our drug laws in the state, and as well as help our addicted family members on the street get off the street and get the help that they need and back to their families. I would like to applaud the police department. A couple weeks ago, we were awarded the 5th safest city in the state of Washington, and that was 14. That was 14 steps up from where we were last year, and it's a great accomplishment, and it's a testament to what Jeff's doing at the police department. It's a testament to what's going on our streets with our police officers, but it's also a great testament to our citizens in making sure that our city's safe from their standpoint also. And I would also like to, as part of that, thank you, give a thanks out to Officer Lexi Warbus, who did a great as a retired police officer. It was a stop and a warrant and drugs that you only dream about, to be able to take that picture with. And she did it. And it was a great accomplishment by her to take that much drugs off the street. And I was able to attend their briefing last night for patrol and award her with a mayor's coin because she did a really good job. So I would like to shout out also to Shane McDaniel and his family for their commitment to the city and providing of their time and their funds to do the Easter egg hunt in North Cove Park on Saturday morning. I attended with my two little dudes, and there was a lot of people there. Probably the most people that I've ever seen in this park, which made my heart full. It was great. It's good to see all the community members out. And so again, thank you to Shane and his family for that. I as well attended the all city meeting, and it's great to see our city family growing and seeing just the great work we're doing. It's kind of it's hard to sell it, right? Like it's hard to sell it to our community members, the great work that, and it's always hard to, as a leader, right? Like you say, oh, your guys do great work. They really do great work in this city, and they're really moving forward the city to doing efficient, purposeful work for our citizens and making sure that we're very accountable with our taxpayer dollars. And that I'm just proud of all of them. Finally, if you wish to hear me talk a lot more, tomorrow I'm giving the State of the City address to the Chamber Commerce, and as well, and that's it. I think noon or something. What's that? 11:30. Okay, 11:30. I just go where I'm told. Yeah, I'll be talking at noon still. And that'll be up at the school district building. And then Rotary, I'll be doing the same State of the City with our Rotary Club at 7:30. We meet at 7:30 on Friday morning at the school district building. So everyone's welcome. And then it's an open forum to Q&A me and put me on the hot box. Great. So with that, we will move forward with, what are we doing? City department reports. I think we've got a report from Public Works Director Aaron Halverson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll keep it brief. There is a memorandum in your council packet that describes the situation with the gateway sign at South Lake Stevens Road and State Route 9. And I'm going to share my screen briefly because I want to share some of the good work of the team. Put it that way. So if you've driven around that roundabout, you've seen a gray wall. The intent is to mount a welcome to City of Lake Stevens sign on that wall. The original design is shown here on the monitor. We were concerned about the blank space. It just doesn't pop the way we wanted it to pop. So we spent some additional time, and this was the design in the beautification plan. I like it. It doesn't fit that wall very well. And so Director Wright and my team got together and came up with a little bit of a different design that incorporates Mount Pilchuck in the background and fills the gray space. And it just really, I think, represents the city better. So we approved that design on the 30th of March, and it's in production now. Expect the sign to be up in the next 6 weeks. Okay. All right. Stop sharing. Okay. Two other things. The sound walls on State Route 9 near the intersection with State Route 204. We know that they have some graffiti on them. We're working with WashDOT to have that removed. Our municipal code requires that graffiti is removed within 10 days. WashDOT owns the sound walls, and we're working through the process. It's a little bit more difficult than we imagined, but we are going to have that problem fixed, and we're really looking at a longer term solution. So hopefully we can create a situation where they're not as appealing to the errant artists in the city. Maybe that's generous. Last, the gate that the city opened at 33rd and 111th Northeast. I know there's been some interest in that. It's a gate on a public roadway. It wasn't operating the way it should. It wasn't opening for emergency vehicles. So rather than creating that risk, we went ahead and opened it, locked it. It will be repaired in the next 3 weeks. But I also handed out some information. It will be repaired and closed once it's operational. We hope that happens within 3 weeks. In the meantime, we put a traffic counter out there. They're averaging about 330 trips over 5 days through there. So 60 trips or so a day. The average speed is 13 miles an hour. The slowest speed was 7 miles an hour, to the mayor's chagrin. And the fastest speed was 25 miles an hour through that roadway. So it's not, it perhaps is not the cut through that one might have imagined. Anyway, we'll get the gate closed and reevaluate later on. Thank you.
Great, Aaron. Appreciate your report. It'll be good to see that sign up there. It's going to look great up there on that wall. Can I get a motion to pass the consent agenda?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, let's go to what everyone is here for. Just 2 seconds, please. Okay. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and announce that we're going to have a public hearing on ordinance 1139 short-term rentals. And we are going to open up that public hearing and start it off with a staff report from Russ Wright and Jill.
Okay, Community Development Director Russ Wright. I'm just going to make a few brief introductory comments, then I'm going to hand it off to Jill. So the ordinance in front of the council tonight should include all of the changes that you requested at your last meeting. We've also given you a summary in the staff report of the process to date, feedback on some of the citizen comment to date, and we've also included some information on the code enforcement process that's happening concurrently and some of the administrative tasks the city has taken on to get ready for this ordinance. I'm going to have Jill Needham present the staff report tonight. Jill has always been here in the background working on this project, helping with redrafting the code, doing the research, and being available at our community meetings. So I'm going to hand it off to Jill.
Thank you, Russ. Mayor, may I go to the podium to speak?
If you wouldn't mind, we would love to have you.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, and good evening. Like Russ said, my name is Jill Needham, and I've been working with Russ on the amendments to the short-term rental ordinance that we have. It's been quite a long process. It was originally introduced back to Planning Commission in December of 2021. The complete chronology, if you'd like to read it, is in the staff report. But since we have a full house of folks wanting to speak tonight, I think that brevity is the name of the game. And since it's been a very iterative public process, the staff and committees have done their due diligence to really craft an ordinance that meets the community's needs. So back in December 2022, council decided to form a subcommittee. 4 meetings were held with that subcommittee, and the draft that came out of that subcommittee was presented to council back in February. The final amendments were discussed on March 21st at that council meeting. I have been working on some application materials for the short-term rental future applicants with staff. so that we can get those uploaded on the website so that we can really hit the ground running when it comes to applications when they start coming in. And then we did receive 5 public comments. Those should have been included in your packets. I'm just going to go over a couple of the common themes and topics that I did see in those comments. One of the main concerns was off-street parking. So currently 1 off-street parking stall is required for every 2 bedrooms within the current draft. So per table 1472, which is also being amended within this ordinance, it is required that there are 2 additional parking stalls for the owner or operator when they are living at the residence, in addition to those that are provided for specifically for the renters. There was another concern about limiting the number of short-term rentals that one owner can operate. Unfortunately, that's something that's a bit hard to enforce. LLCs can be used to easily circumvent this, and the city cannot oversee person-to-person property transfers. That's not something that we regulate. And then one of the other main themes was requiring the owner-operator to use the short-term rental as their primary residence. Instead, section C1 in the draft requires that the owner-operator instead live for at least 240 days in their primary residence that is located within the Lake Stevens urban growth area. That includes the urban growth area itself and the city limits. This came out of the subcommittee ultimately as a compromise to limit corporate and that non-local ownership, and also ensure a quick response time to any nuisances that might arise. And then there was also concern about the use of the term rental party found in C3. There were concerns that it could be construed to allow parties and loud gatherings. This isn't the intent, and that would otherwise be prohibited by the nuisance activity section in E, as well as things like the noise ordinance and Title IX of the municipal code. The last comment was related to a specific enforcement matter, and that is forwarded to our code enforcement officer and is being dealt with accordingly. Of course, verbal comments in person or online are always welcome once the public hearing is open. Russ, did you have anything more you wanted to add?
I don't have any other comments right now, but available for questions if council has any before we move into the public testimony.
Yep, I'll open council questions for staff.
Okay, I'll start. I believe that last time we talked about this, we talked about the fee for putting in the initial fee for putting in for this short-term rental permit. I wasn't sure what we actually were left with, but right now in there, it's at $500. And I know that Councilmember Tadgett wanted it to be less. I didn't know if we left with a decision on that or not. Didn't, I mean, it's at $500 in the ordinance. I don't necessarily agree with that.
If I may comment on that, I think the discussion was along the lines of how many hours does it take staff to put that in place, and staff's hourly billing rate is about $100 an hour, which I think is probably on the low side of things compared to a lot of businesses around the area. So that, I think that was kind of the rationale. I'm of the opinion it should probably be a little bit higher when you take code enforcement action into account for that as far as staff time. Or maybe the annual renewal needs to be higher than $100, but certainly we have difference of opinion on this. I would propose that the fee needs to be probably closer to $750 to account for staff time of processing the applications, as well as code enforcement and any other activities that takes place as part of putting together guidelines, application forms, things of that sort.
I'm on the other end of this scale. I think $500 is excessive. I don't putting together the information, someone looking it through and looking at it. 5 hours seems like a long time to go through something like this. I'm more in the neighborhood of 250, 350, something like that. And the renewal fee, it is what it is. I don't know that I'm necessarily for renewing it every single year. But that being said, I don't understand the need to renew every single year. If you have information to update it, but.
So in order to keep us on track, this is great deliberation stuff under deliberation, but do we have any questions for staff before we list here the public? Okay, no questions for staff. So let's move forward to, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the floor for public comments from the audience on just this subject, STR subject. What is the folks on?
So for, I don't see any hands right now. So anybody that's online right now that would like to talk to the short-term rentals public hearing, now is your opportunity to raise your digital hand. We know we do have one. So let me bring her in.
Okay, so just so what we're gonna do on this one, we do have quite a few, but I think we're okay with sticking with 3 minutes per person. I would just ask that you stick with 3 minutes per person.
We've got a timer up on the screen here.
We do have a timer, and that's when the little trap door opens up. You don't know where it goes.
Okay, so Kirsten, you spoke to us earlier. You said you'd like to speak about the STR matter. Yeah, ask her to unmute.
Okay. Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to get back to basics. I want to talk about what is your job as a city council. It is your job to set appropriate zoning regulations for business and zoning so that business can conduct business and people that live in residential zones are able to enjoy their lives and without interference. Residential zones are designed to protect residents from noise and traffic and to ensure that we can live our lives in peace. There is absolutely no law that says that people have a right to make money running a business out of their home. And I think a lot of the discussion that I've heard coming from the council is predicated on that misperception. In fact, the law is to the contrary. The law is designed to keep businesses in business zones in order to protect the residential use of residents in residential zones. What you're doing here today is to create a law that would allow people to conduct business in their homes. You just made that up, that is okay to do, and I am here to challenge you on that. What you are contemplating and allowing the corporations and the LLCs to buy our homes, in our neighborhoods to run as businesses is unconscionable. It would be very simple to regulate that, and I believe it is misguided to tell the public that that is unenforceable or difficult to enforce. Other jurisdictions are doing it easily. It's one thing to allow a homeowner to supplement their income by having additional space, but it's another thing to allow corporations to come in and make just straight up income in a residential neighborhood. I don't think an argument can be made for that. The issue that we have here is accountability. Your accountability as council members to us as residents. And your accountability in this law is not stringent at all. The law is vague in areas, it is unresponsive in areas, it does not guarantee action in areas. I urge the council to continue to work on this. The solutions seem simple. When and not if problems arise, they're going to be complicated and large. Your lack of dealing with this is inexplicable to me, and I think to all the other people sitting here today. Thank you.
So I do have one phone number, 8665. It ends, just reminding you to hit *9 if you do want to speak to the council. I'm not saying anything. I'll let you know if it comes up.
Hearing nothing, we'll go in person. Let's start off with Jeremy Williams. We actually go to the microphone up here. Jeremy Williams, followed by Kim Shipman.
Hey, my name is Jeremy Williams, current resident of Lake Stevens. Haven't done this before, so not sure exactly. Am I just basically giving my opinion on the?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, I mean, the cost of living right now, you know, in our coastal markets are it's really expensive. I've got teenagers, and the thought of them having to pay for everything and live for everything in this area is hard. And so if I can find a way to supplement my income while also showing them what I believe the American dream is to have home ownership, to own your own business, to provide structure, not just for yourself, but for the others, and to show people that you're a valuable asset to the community and that you live in. Yeah, I have an STR on Lake Stevens, and I'm glad that I have it. I don't think that we're going to get a huge flux of big party goers to Lake Stevens. You know, this is no Vegas, this is no LA, this is no New York. It's Lake Stevens. The people who have stayed with us have been couples who actually stay here in Washington, and they're looking to come to our city to enjoy a little bit of the lake, and also just to get away from places like Puyallup, Everett, Western, different parts of Western Washington. So all in all, kind of I lost words, but I'm glad that I had my STR, and I just hope that the things that the council members are putting into place ends up being a win-win for everybody, for those that don't want it, and for those that do have it or do want it in the future to supplement income for this really expensive market that we live in. So that's it.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm gonna ask you all not to applaud. We appreciate the applause. A big smile would be great. That way we can keep this meeting going. Kim's up, and then Nikki Odegaard.
Okay, hi, my name's Kim Shipman, and I live right downtown here in Old Town. Full disclosure, I was part of the STR subcommittee, so I did hear all sides of this issue. I have to thank the city council. They have put a lot of thought into this. They've had a lot of voices from the community involved. And honestly, everybody was represented in that subcommittee. It was city council, it was the planning commission, and it was citizens on both sides of the issue. So I do want to thank the city for doing this. Also for limiting the number we have in our city. They're limiting it to 50. On the lake, they're limiting to 10. That was one thing that I brought to the forefront. Like you said, most people aren't coming here to party. I think if they're going to party, that's probably going to happen more so on the lake. One of my concerns was a little bit of vague things about public nuisance. So I did look up the municipal code on that. It is listed on 9.56.040, and it is detailed for those that are concerned about people partying and being a public nuisance. That is included, just the wording isn't. The code, however, is included. One thing I did have a question about is when not on site, it says a local contact. Does local mean within Lake Stevens? Does that mean within Snohomish County? What does local mean? And then the last thing is, why was the multiple violations of short-term rental code would result in progressive enforcement? Why was that removed? That's something I think a lot of us are curious about is, if we do have someone who does violate these codes, what are the consequences? And are they spelled out so your average, like everyday homeowner that might want to do an STR is clear on what are the repercussions if we do indeed have a tenant that breaks some of these codes? Because I think that's everyone's concern. We're all very respectful, I think, of our property rights and those type of things. And we don't have any hotels here. So if you have a wedding here or a family function, you don't have room in your home, it's kind of nice to be able to rent a room from someone else here in the city. But having said that, if it turns out being a corporation that's buying these and the lack of oversight is resulting in a public nuisance, what are the repercussions? And I didn't see that spelled out. And I really would have liked to have seen that. And even I think if I were an STR owner here in Lake Stevens, I would like to know what happens if my tenants, quite frankly, don't behave. And that's really all I have to say, other than I just wanted to thank the council again, because like I said, this has been going on for a long time and it's time we make a decision, and I appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you. Nikki Odegaard. And after Nikki, I've got Eileen Spradlin.
Hi, I'm Nikki Odegaard and live on the lake. And I was really happy to see that the new rules were out. It would have been nice to have had a little more time to be able to spread them around. This was a very short time being able to look at them and actually do anything. I could have had a lot of people come here with wanting to make comments, I think, if had a little more time. But basically, the thing that most concerns me is the having corporations, the ability to make it be the LLCs. The idea, I love the idea, like you were talking about. That's what I think this should be all about. It's like if you want to make some extra money, it is expensive living in Lake Stevens. Great. If you can do that and you are well in charge, you're there, or you have someone in charge to kind of take care of things when you're not there. But this whole thing, it seemed like the having people, the LLC situation, the person just has to live somewhere in Lake Stevens and then can have however many other places. That just does not seem to me what the idea of the STRs is. And that concerns me, because I have no doubt that unsupervised rental places on the lake are going to go nuts. I'm sorry, whatever, yes, you get your basic nice families coming for a quiet weekend, but how are you going to not be getting some good party hardies? I mean, we've seen what happened. People have experienced it already. So there's that side of it. That's kind of my main thing. I wondered if more people knew about this. People generally don't kind of go on the city site, but perhaps there's some like community websites on Facebook and things like that. If that were put out there, I think you might find you got a lot of feedback, which maybe you don't really want, but it's like, I think if the more people knew about it, I think you would find there would be a lot of whatever. And just what you were just saying about the annual renewals, given that how you can, is it like for 10 places on the lake, is it the first 10 to get their things in? And, that's going to be people that know about it for starters. But that's kind of like, if you don't have annual renewals, then no one else, there's going to be 10 people or whatever on the lake with a place, and that's it. So that seems a little undemocratic. But just my thoughts. I have to stop now because I run out of time, but just thoughts. I mean, I appreciate that lots of work has gone into this already.
Thank you, Nikki. Appreciate your words. Eileen, and then followed by Todd Spradlin.
Hi, I'm Eileen Spradlin. I live at 10429 East Davies Loop Road. First, I want to thank the advisory committee for your thoughtful contributions, including the primary residence and owner occupancy requirement, requiring rental operators to be on call 24/7, and capping the number of short-term rentals allowed in the city to 10 waterfront residential, 50 total. I'm here this evening to respectfully ask council to reconsider two key elements of this draft in favor of strong public opinion and the concerns of the Citizens Committee. Number one, short-term rentals must be occupied as a primary residence unless the owner-operator has a primary residence within the Lake Stevens urban growth area. And two, no more than two short-term rental parties and visitors can occupy the short-term rental at any time. Permitting business interests to own and operate an unspecified number of unhosted short-term rentals 365 days per year, exempt from the primary residence and owner occupancy requirement, invites speculation, and your city residents remain strongly opposed to this. Permitting two rental parties and visitors is vague, it is unenforceable, and it potentiates excessive large gatherings. After 2 years working closely with many other concerned residents, I believe a majority of us could support this ordinance if you limit the number of business-owned short-term rentals allowed to operate exempt from the primary residence owner occupancy requirement, or add back the 2 permits limit you recommended in your previous code. You specify the total number of occupants and visitors allowed to inhabit the rental for code enforcement, and staff continue to monitor and report frequently on the success of code enforcement's ability to bring non-permitted rentals into compliance, and that permit fees are sufficient to cover staff costs. Please do not approve this ordinance before you seriously consider these revisions. The citizens of Lake Stevens remain adamant about preserving the nature and characteristics of our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Next, we have Todd and then Robert Tinker.
My name is Todd Spradlin, and I live at 10429 East Davies Loop Road. Also, no collaboration. Eileen was upstairs, I was downstairs. So, but I do have a few concerns regarding the short-term rentals. Many good ideas have been brought up over the last year regarding STRs, starting with the Planning Commission's recommendations along with citizen group recommendations. They were a little stronger than what's in the ordinance now. And for some reason, these groups' ideas have been disregarded by the council. And I feel that we're back to a watered down ordinance where regulations are vague and don't appear to be enforceable. A couple of examples. In section C, titled General Operating Requirements, point number 3 states that, quote, no more than 2 short-term rental parties can occupy the short-term rental at a time, unquote. I'd like to hear a definition of the amount of people that make up a party. Hotels, motels, inns all have occupancy limits. So I'd like to see that issue better defined. Another in section D, titled Permit Modification, number 1 states, quote, the Director of Planning and Community Development or designate may modify the operational requirements based on a site-specific circumstance for the purpose of allowing reasonable accommodations of a short-term rental, unquote. Now, I think our Director of Planning Community Development is one of the smartest people in the room, but it seems very arbitrary for one person to come up with that definition. I'd like to see more specific language regarding that issue as well. I'd like to be able to see the short-term rental licensees online. You know, we can look up business license online, find out who owns a business and what kind of business it is. I'd just like to know what's happening in our neighborhoods, even further than 300 feet away. Our newest council member, Donahue, a few weeks ago, said he likes to look at documents for holes in them that he can be challenged legally. There are a lot of vague areas in this, and I think some of them can be challenged legally. I believe the more you define these vague areas now, the less time we'll have to be spent on the future correcting them. And, you know, just a side note, Oh, I got a quick side note. City of Leavenworth is considering banning all STRs because of the negative effect it has on the residential communities and what it's doing to price of the homes. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. All right, I've got Robert, and then we're going to Jesse Maddox.
Hi, bear with me. My name is Robert Tinker. I grew up just a few miles on 99th Avenue Northeast from here. After college, my wife and I have operated 2 short-term rentals in Seattle. One living next door to one, so immediately adjacent, basically similar to what somebody with an ADU would be in. We did that for 3 years. And then we moved out here when our children were born and operated another one for 1 year from here to there. So I got kind of some experience on both ends of the short-term rental. I want everyone to know, if you're concerned about the people there, the best thing you can do is embrace them, talk to them. Hey, I see you guys, where are you guys visiting from? What, you know, that it really, it'll make them be more respectful to the community they're in, and the immediate neighborhood, maybe noise and stuff. All those people are really nice, or, you know, you guys go somewhere fun. My concern is when I operated the one immediately adjacent, basically like an owner operator, regularly, it was after dinner, people come home, or they come home and the group, you know, typically hasn't seen each other for a while. Maybe they're visiting each other. They go out on the deck, the patio, and they start talking, and they know they're not supposed to be out there after 10 and making noise, but they think they're quiet. They'll be quiet. You know, they're not going to make any problems. Well, you know, laughing starts that, and it does. It does. Not every person, but more than half. I would wake up after 10 or 11:30, 1:30, whatever, and, you know, send a text, make a call, no response because the phone's inside the house, wherever. And then I'd get my flashlight, walk next door, and just say, hey, I had to be polite. I mean, I wanted to get good reviews on my Airbnb, and I wanted them to have a good time, have a good experience, and say, hey, you know, there's no outside entertaining after 10 p.m. and we have to, you know, you can do whatever you want inside. Go have a good time inside, and that, and that's all it took. And then there was no problem for the rest of their stay. But then you get somebody else within the week, you know? And so for me, I'm benefiting from it. I was making, you know, with time, we're making third wage. And now, so it was my motivation to do that. Now, if I wasn't at that site, which is part of the reason we only operated the other one for 1 year, I can imagine what the neighbors are enduring.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay. That's a bummer. I had a lot more to say. Thank you for my time.
Hey, Robert, thank you for your time, and thanks for bringing the little people. They're perfect. Got Jesse Maddox and then Tyson Nelson.
All right, I've never done this before either, so thanks, Jeremy. I don't know if somebody's got a rendition of what you guys issued out, because I'm hearing a lot of people talking about what is in the new thing. So I'm just going to shoot off my thoughts. First of all, for the people that are worried about corporations, I'm an individual. I also own a business as an individual, as a corporation. So big corporations aren't 30, 40 people necessarily. It could just be me for tax purposes wanting to open a corporation. We have a lodging shortage. What Lake Stevens has is a lot of storage facilities. We have no hotels. You're thinking about just people wanting to make money. What about people? We have people in Snohomish right now staying at our STR that had a fire in their house. They want to keep their kids in school district. So, you know, hotels are not conducive to family. Short-term rentals are conducive to families. People gather. I hear a lot of this partying. I live on the lake, 1214 East Lakeshore Drive. I bought my property. I've improved my property. I take my neighbor's garbage bins down. I make Lake Stevens look better. I do not want partiers at my house. I don't allow partying at my house. I have 4 outdoor cameras, and I will shut down parties in my house. I don't want a bunch of drunk college students ruining my investment. So I'm right there with you. In fact, two noise complaints I've got is for me having people out around a little campfire, and I felt really, really bad. Never had one person complain at over 40 guests. Current regulations are not on par. I hear people talking about Leavenworth. We are not Leavenworth. This is not a tourist destination. Okay, we're a little pigeonhole community. Let's look at Snohomish. Let's look at Everett. Let's look at Marysville. If we want to talk about other places, let's look at Las Vegas and what the court did there. So we're definitely not on par. We bring commerce into this city. They spend their dollars here. They go to our restaurants. They go to our coffee shops. They help sustain the community. I don't know what the living in on site is or why people want to have. How many people here have stayed in an STR and love it when the owner is there looking at your children, asking if you're going to use the bathroom? That's crazy. I don't get it. I guarantee you don't take your families and stay at a place with a host. Prove me wrong. I can talk to you outside. I only got 3 minutes. And then we want to talk about corporations. What about all the daycares? What about all the mechanics? What about all the tax accountants? Are you going to stop all them too? They make noise. They have people parking. It's no different in my personal opinion. Oh man. COVID definitely stopped the whole working from home kind of thing and turned that all around. So yes, man, people do have a right to work from home and have a business out of their home. It's called a business license. I don't know why we're limiting it to 10 on the lake. I'd like to know if there's a grandfather clause or I have a class 2 when we're talking about how much it costs, $1,000. If it lowers, can I get a refund? Marcus Tadgen, I agree with you, but I disagree. At the same time, you're worried about costs. You probably paid $100,000 for Cameron to run around, check my Facebook, check my Airbnb, we're spending tons and tons of money circling on something that's really not a big problem. It was one incident 3 years ago, and now we're addressing it to me when it's not.
That's 3 minutes.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Justin. And we got Tyson Nelson.
All right, my name's Tyson Nelson. I live right over here on Lakeshore Drive, right by the swim beach. Want to start out, there's been some comments about corporations, potentially operating in our city. If you look at some of the data behind it, AirDNA is a great website to look. There's not a high enough occupancy rate in this area to really make a lot of money. So really it is people like us who are wanting to, make a little bit of money on the side and have fun doing it. And also LLCs, I think, are a great thing. So if you see something in an LLC, that it's a corporation, not true at all. Every personal primary home I've lived in has been an LLC to silo that off in case I get sued or somebody trips on one of my properties. It's a great thing to do. So if you see an LLC, it doesn't mean that it's a corporation who's running that. As far as, having the 50 and the 10 on the lake, I mean, we don't have enough attractions here to really, in my opinion, warrant that. I think it should be open for now. If there gets to be, as we're doing this licensing process, if it gets out of hand, then absolutely in the future, we can put some sort of a limit on it. But I mean, we don't have zoos. It's not a place I would take my family unless on the lake, maybe. But anything off the lake, there's just not enough attractions here to really make this a tourist destination. As far as one proposed change that I would like to see when I was reading through it, I own a triplex on Stitch Road, backs up to Stitch Lake. And I would like to have a short-term rental and possibly more than one of those units. One of the things that I see with the current, the way it's currently written, I talked to, I think it was Jill, whatever her name is, you're only allowed one if it's 4 units or less. The problem with that is that the cohesiveness, of the people that are living there, it makes it difficult if you have one short-term rental. People are on vacation doing what couples do on vacation, sharing a wall with somebody who lives there full time. I would like to see the option to have, if it's under 4 units, have up to all 4 be able to be short-term rentals, and then above 4 units. So if it's a large apartment complex, maybe have it capped at a certain amount. Other than that, we had family stay with us for the first time. We've only lived in Lake Stevens for about 6 months, and we didn't have enough room for all of our family. So some of them took advantage of an Airbnb right here in the park, there's a blue house right here, and it was great. Like I said, there's no lodging in the area, and it was great to have them be able to stay there and utilize that. So thanks for your time.
Thank you, Jason. Great comments. That's all the comments I.
Mayor, I've got 2 hands up online. Are we gonna allow those?
All right, let's do.
Oh, actually, just one no. One dropped off.
All right.
Okay, I'm gonna bring in Dave Nelson. Oh, actually 2 hands, so
Okay.
it'll be Dave Nelson and then Joe Platts.
Okay.
Let's go. Oh, okay. Actually. All right, Dave Nelson, can you hear us? Can you unmute?
Okay, I think I unmuted.
Okay, great. Dave, you've got 3 minutes to talk about short-term rentals.
Thank you. It won't take very long. My name is Dave Nelson. I live at 2220 McNaughton Lane on the far north end of the lake. I have a home there that I've lived in for 30 years. I've been coming to Lake Stevens since the late 70s. My in-laws kind of homesteaded there in the early 60s when there really wasn't anything going on the lake. But I know that when I moved up here 30 years ago with my wife, it was to live in a nice, quiet bedroom community. We were fortunate enough to be able to build a home on the property. We've lived there. We've had watercraft. We have a lot of fun. We have parties on the holidays and things like that. And I have 5 homes on the street that we have there, and it's a private road. Absolutely ideal for short-term rentals. I'm just praying that nobody on my street wants to have anything to do with short-term rentals. I think Lake Stevens is going through a cultural change, which is going to drive out some of its best customers, namely landowners on the lake. I think it's a completely stupid idea to begin with, but I know that the ship has probably sailed to a large extent. I just saw a story on short-term rentals in Indio, California, where I'm a snowbird for half the year, and then I've 6 months in Lake Stevens starting early next month. And the permit renewal fees for short-term rentals just went from $200 a year to $2,000 a year in Indio. Now that's a real disincentive to renting short-term. I hope Lake Stevens might consider a bigger fee for on the lake property for short-term rental renewals and the licensing fee. The last thing we want is to have even more traffic on our lake. We have a lot of events and festivals, Aquafest, bike races, triathlons. We have a lot of things going on, and I can just see it now that people are going to be renting their homes out to a lot of people all at once, and it's not going to be enforceable. I think our police force is already understaffed and overworked, and I'm very much against the whole idea of short-term rentals, and just wanted to make sure that this voice was heard from somebody that has lived on the lake for 30 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We'll take Joe Platts. Joe, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thank you. I want to make a couple of different comments. I'm a real estate professional. I was operating a STR on North Lake Shore Drive where I live. And I took it down during this time while we were deliberating this. Somebody's going to live in that property. It's either going to be rented long-term or short-term or owner occupied. I also want to comment on the 240-day per year occupancy requirement within the Lake Stevens UGA. Not only is this ridiculous and bizarre, but outside of city limits, code enforcement has no way to regulate this. I understand you're trying to limit commercial activity and outside investors and big bad corporations and all those kinds of things, but the city doesn't have any jurisdiction over that. There's not only property rights, but there's the right for people to invest and spend their money on the assets they choose to invest in. I urge the council to remove that unenforceable section of the proposed law, avoiding putting the city in a position of either not being able to enforce an owner occupancy of somebody operating this from a home that is either in or out of Lake Stevens. Even if it was inside the city limits, I have no idea how that would be regulated. And I think it's really going to open the city up for a series of lawsuits. My second comment is regarding the limit on the number of STRs. Again, as it was mentioned by Jesse Maddox, this is not a big issue. There's not a lot of enforcement issues. I didn't have any neighbor complaints or any enforcement issues, and I've only seen evidence of one documented.
Also in your packet that was provided tonight, it shows the number of people who have complied and who have abstained and in the permit process. And we're talking a negligible number of homes in regards to the percentage of dwelling units that we have within our city. I think we are wasting a tremendous amount of time, money, and effort trying to regulate something that doesn't really need to be regulated. And I think that a cap, whether on the water or off the water, is again, it's a ridiculous use of time and resources. And then when we do hit this magic cap, how are you going to explain to a property owner that they're no longer able to utilize their property in the way that they deem fit? So we get to choose when we buy real estate how we're going to use that property. And that's where I don't think that zoning and regulations and licenses and all those kinds of things serve the purpose of real estate investing and home ownership.
All right, great. With that, we got one late entry. I think Julian put it in the back there. Julian Travis in person.
Hi, my name is Julian Travis. I own a short-term rental here on 20th Street. It's kind of a unique testimonial story, actually, because the house was previously a transitional home for felons. And so when I acquired it as an investor, it used to be housing upwards to 20 level 2, level 3 sex offenders, murderers, arsonists, you name it. And so when I acquired it, I was really going to flip it for a big bag of money, but then something struck me as a unique business opportunity as Airbnb. I was like, let me try this. And I've had nothing but great reviews. In the 18 months we're in operation, we had almost 200 guests stay, not a single complaint. Every single review was 5 stars and above. Myself personally, when I bought the house, I invested $770,000 in the renovation, and since then another $55,000 in renovating the house. And I put like my entire heart and soul into this house and business. And what's unique about that was it led me to meet some great people in the community. I've never felt more connected to a city ever in my life. I come from a military background, and I lived in Marysville since '96. And ever since acquiring my property here in Lake Stevens, I felt this dramatic difference in community because of the Airbnb, because the neighbors loved what we did with the property. Like every single neighbor has praised us for what we've done to invest in the community. And I'm very proud of that fact. And I know a lot of people are concerned about big bad corporations, and we do believe we need oversight. I absolutely agree with that. And there's plenty of us who are doing it right, who haven't really violated any big rules that should be allowed to continue doing business. Mine's a non-owner occupied Airbnb, and I don't understand why anyone ever want to stay in an owner occupied Airbnb personally, but I second Jesse in his statement of that. Also, everything Joe said was 100% on the mark, because I think we're opening up the city to lawsuits. And just generally speaking, what we have worked on as a subcommittee, because I've worked with Brooke Trout, is creating awareness around the positive aspects of Airbnb. Most of us are putting a ton of money and energy into these properties to not only beautify the properties, but to maintain them. Long-term rentals are never maintained the way our short-term rentals are. I guarantee it. I have mine professionally landscaped, professionally cleaned almost every other week. And the amount of money I've invested into it is disproportionate to any long-term rental I've ever seen. So that's kind of my perspective on that. And I understand how a lot of local members are concerned with STRs. And I've heard about that one bad case. I think this Bufflings? It was a really unique situation where there was one bad egg that kind of ruined it for everybody else. And I just hope that the council recognizes that there's plenty of other STR owners who aren't those people.
Julian, thank you. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close public comments portion of the hearing, and we're going to move to any comments by staff.
Don't have any immediate comments. Open for questions from council during your deliberation.
Okay, so with that, we'll move to questions by the council of staff. Don't be shy.
Not me. Russ, a couple of questions. We had a number of folks testify they have STRs. How many of those are regulated?
Right now in the city, there is one legally operating short-term rental that is a tourist home.
Just one?
Just one.
Follow-up question. We had some other concerns about the cap on the total number. I know that your staff has worked hard to try to determine how many dwellings we have in our city that are operating as an Airbnb or VRBO. Can you provide an estimate of what that number is?
Sure, it's somewhere between 25 and 30. The number seems to fluctuate.
Okay, so with a limit of 50, we're ensuring that current operators, providing that they meet the other aspects of the ordinance, would be able to follow through with the process to get licensed and continue to operate their home as a short-term rental.
Yes.
Thank you.
Kind of following up on that, I guess it would be interesting to note if we only have 23, why are we limiting the cap at 50 if this area is not conducive to STRs? The reverse is true in the sense that if there's not a demand for it, why are we giving up 50? Maybe it should be lower. I mean, we heard testimony tonight that says this isn't a tourist place. So maybe we're allowing too many. Just a thought.
I have a follow-up to that as well. Right now, if we did 50, that's 0.4% of our total population. Places like Tahoe and so forth, the reason why they started put this effect is 25%. Lake Chelan put a cap on it. They're now in the middle of about 9 to 10 different lawsuits, several of which are going to the Supreme Court. So we'll see different kinds of legislation, but I think Joe Platts, the person had mentioned that this does open us up to lawsuits, and other jurisdictions have already hit the Supreme Court. California is in a significant amount of litigious over this as well. So is Utah and several other states. Arizona is in the middle of several lawsuits concerning this as well. All of them going to go to the Supreme Court, costing cities and counties thousands and thousands of dollars. But on that note, Chelan has around 16%. I was doing some research on. Most of them are significantly higher. Having 50 with 10 on the lake is like a pretty ridiculous number. And then having 300 feet apart, think about this. If a certain group of people wanted to get together and make sure that there's no STRs on the lake, they go and apply for permits and no one can operate on the lake because all their permits will be gone. And someone said, hey, it's kind of an injustice. It's like kind of taking people's rights to do it. Let's do it annually. But if 10 people get together and say, hey, let's go just do it and take it, that means no one gets to have an STR on the lake. So I would say, I think 10 is an unreasonable number and could certainly make it so people who want to operate a business would not be able to.
Hey, just so we stay formal on this, let's make sure that this is questions for staff and then we'll go into deliberation. Great points. Let's make sure we keep it in order. Any other further comments for staff?
No.
Russ, can you comment again on the time you spend administering these permits?
At one of the last meetings we had with council, we talked about the fee, and I estimated that this permit would probably take 3 to 5 hours to complete. That's based on intake into the counter, going through the noticing process, if any, verifying materials, et cetera. So, probably 3 to 5 hours. I think 5 hours is more correct. And that's also based on similar types of permits that would be type 1 permits. This has additional requirements from other type 1 permits. So that adds to the time frame.
Thank you.
Chief, I had a question. Did we ever get a number of how many complaints that you've come to that specifically address STRs?
So I believe after we reviewed the data that we had one complaint that we could definitely track back to a short-term rental.
And over what period of time was that over?
I believe that was from 2018.
So ever since we've ever tracked data, we've had one.
Any more questions for staff?
I don't have a question. I just want to make a statement. I think the most important thing is that our staff is not overwhelmed with whatever we decide and that we are serving our community. If we accomplish that, then I'm happy.
Okay.
And I hope we can.
All right. Gary, did you have anything?
No, I was just going to, for the purpose of deliberation, was going to move forward a motion to approve ordinance number 1139.
Okay, so before we do that, I think I need to close the public hearing first. Before we close the public hearing, is there any more deliberation? We can bring up a further deliberation under discussion under the motion, that's fine. But is there any discussion, further deliberation in the public hearing portion? Okay, hearing none, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing and I'm gonna ask for a action by the council.
Well, again, for the purpose of deliberation and moving this forward, I would move to approve ordinance number 1139.
I'll second.
Okay, so I have a motion to approve ordinance 1139 and I have a second. I'm gonna open up the floor to discussion on the motion.
Mr. Mayor, I will be offering two amendments. One of which is a definition of a rental party. I do think it's important to define that. It is very open-ended. I would propose that that read that definition of a rental party is no more than 4 individuals. In our present ordinance, it talks about 2 rental parties that can occupy a STR, so that would be a total of 8 people. This is for the purpose of non-related people so that we don't get into the family issue specifically.
Can I get a motion for that amendment?
From me?
Correct.
Sure. I'll make a motion to define the or provide a definition of a rental party, which is a maximum of 4 people that are not related that shall have the ability to occupy a STR.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor that defines rental party as maximum of 4 people that are not related. Does that sound correct?
Yes, 4 individuals.
Okay, do I have a second? I'll ask again for a second. Okay,
So 4 individuals that are not related, so that doesn't have anything to do with families. So if you had a 6-person family, that's not in that data.
That is correct.
Second.
okay, I have a second for the amendment. Discussion on just the amendment.
As the proposer of the amendment, I think it's important that we define this issue. In our definitions, it says nothing about what a rental party is. Could be 10 people, could be 150. I don't know. How do we enforce it?
So just to clarify, I agree, we could do a better job defining this. So under that proposed definition, we could say a family of 6 plus 3 or 4 additional people. How would that work? So the family wouldn't count.
As long as they're not related.
And then, so it would be 4 additional people on top of that?
Mhm.
Okay.
Further discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote. We're voting on just this amendment. All those in favor of the amendment,
I would call for a roll call vote on this.
roll call vote. Kelly?
Councilmember Daughtry.
Oh,
We did.
Aye.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
Aye.
Councilmember Donahue,
Aye.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Aye.
Councilmember Jorstad.
No.
Councilmember Ewing,
No.
Councilmember Tagent.
No.
Okay, motion passes 4-3 for that amendment, and you had a second amendment?
Yes, and this is regarding the number of rentals that could be owned by any one individual, married couple, or business interest or corporate entity. This was recommended by the subcommittee, I believe. And I would like to reinsert this that no more than 2 short-term rentals may be operated or owned by individual married couple, business entity, or corporate entity within the city.
Okay, can you put that in the form of a motion on an amendment?
Regarding, and I don't, I believe it's section 3C. Or excuse me, section C, item number 3. Unfortunately, these pages are not numbered.
section 3. 3C.
See item number 3 where, oh, I'm sorry, that's not it. Did you have it?
I would recommend that you put that in under section A2, under restrictions.
So under section A2, under restrictions, I would move that no more than 2 short-term rentals may be operated by an individual, married couple, business interest, or corporate entity within the city. May be owned or operated.
Okay, so I have a motion on the floor for an amendment that there would be an addition to A2, no more than 2 short-term rentals by the list that Councilmember Peter Shaken gave. Do I have a second on that motion?
Sorry.
Okay, I have a second on the motion. Discussion on just this amendment.
So does that limit a business from operating? So it would stop the ability for a business to operate other ones for somebody else. Because it says the amendment was that they can't operate 2. But if they're supposed to turn it over to someone, so then all of a sudden you have a company that maybe does this full-time basis, that means they wouldn't be able to operate. So we would stifle someone from doing business in Lake Stevens. Is that what the point is?
Yes,
So you don't want business in Lake Stevens to be able to do
I
this?
didn't say that.
Well, that's what it would do. It stops business.
We only have 20.
Can you put the mic in front of you, Gary, please?
We only have 23 or so operating here, which is, in my opinion, rather insignificant numbers. So I don't know how we're stopping things. They can, gosh sakes, there's another 30, 27 that could open up.
I can't vote for that, to have someone not letting a company operate, so that way someone could, a free choice, say, I would like this person to operate this for me. I don't want to stifle someone's ability to do business in Lake Stevens, so I'll vote no on this.
Further discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote again.
This will be a random roll call vote. Councilmember Dickinson,
Will you state exactly what I'm voting on? Because this bounced all over the place for me. I'm sorry. Is this in a statement that
Go
I'm
ahead,
voting for?
I mean, in essence, it's
Yes.
limiting the number of STRs an individual, a married couple, a business entity or corporate entity could own or operate within the city. Keeps a hand to deal with the corporate or business.
Yeah, it limits them, no more than 2 SCRs can be operated by the list. I wasn't able to write all the list down.
Individual, married couple, business interest or corporate entity.
Okay.
It's a tough one, Mary.
I know.
Sorry.
Sorry.
First one on the roll call. vote.
I hear this. I hear this. Yes. I'm gonna vote no.
Councilmember Ewing. That's a no.
No.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
Yes.
Councilmember Taggett,
No.
Councilmember Jorstad. No. Councilmember Donahue,
No.
Councilmember Daughtry.
Yes. Okay, amendment does not pass. Do we have any further proposed amendments?
I have 2.
Okay, go
amendments I'd
ahead.
like to propose. I'd like to propose that the regulation of 300 feet go to 150 feet radius.
Where are you at specifically there?
The radius that they say between one unit from another unit would be 300 feet.
This is on B2.
Yeah.
The reason I propose this is because a lot of people might have a duplex or 2 units right next to each other and had bought them for the purpose of doing this. That would eliminate them from being able to do it. And one person in the neighborhood could stop that for everybody else in the neighborhood being able to do it. And if they're not part of an HOA, because HOAs have rules that differentiate between whether you can have one or not. But say someone moved into a community and purchased one of these or was living in it or inherited it. If one person in a community applies for a permit, that means no one else can apply for a permit in that unit, which is kind of like a government taking. You don't have the right to, exercise the ability to do business on it. And I feel like 300 feet would significantly stifle someone's ability to do that.
Okay, so can I say your motion is to change B2 to strike 300 and replace with 100?
I said 150.
Oh, 150?
Yeah, I just cut the number in half. It was somewhat of an arbitrary number before.
Okay, 150. Okay, we have a motion on the,
I'll second.
okay, and we have a second. I will open up for the discussion.
I will not support that amendment because there's vast majority of this city that is not protected by HOAs. So trying to get some protection to some folks that are in probably older neighborhoods that simply don't have HOAs, probably don't even have CC&Rs for the most part. There is a lot of that throughout the city in the older areas, so I will not support that.
I guess I have a follow-up question. Real estate is not my forte.
Sure.
Something like a duplex or something, wouldn't that typically by definition be located on the same parcel though? So it wouldn't be impacted by this particular section?
It depends. Maybe someone has a unit, an accessory dwelling unit. Or maybe they lived in one house, built a house and it was their family home. And then they built a home next door on a different parcel. They wouldn't be able to rent those out if they so desired. For me, and then the other part of it is 300 feet encompasses a whole community. It can encompass a lot. The bulk of the new stuff that we're talking about in the last 15, 20 years, most of the communities that come up of homes of 30, 40, 50 homes or more, all are regulated by CC&Rs. I have a association management company. Almost all of them exclusively have no less than 30 day. It's pretty rare to not have that. I would agree with Councilman Peters Hagen. Older communities that were probably in the 40s, 50s, 60s, things along those lanes, they were probably had no CC&Rs or anything like that, but they weren't in those days building a whole lot of tight-knit communities. It was maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 homes. So, if there was a community of 20 homes and they're somewhat, put together in today's standards, you get 1. And I think 150 might allow 2 out of that. Once again, we're talking about a cap of 0.4%.
Any further discussion? Okay, I'm gonna call for a vote on this. It'll be a roll call vote, and the motion on the floor is to change in section B2 to strike 300 and replace with 150.
Councilmember Donahue.
Knew it was gonna be me. Councilmember Tadgett's point is well taken. I guess my concern is just, this was a discussion point that came up, when I mentioned the, segregating the lake. And one of the things was brought up is there are certain protections lacking there. And so for that reason, no.
Councilmember Daughtry.
No.
Councilmember Tadgett.
Yes.
Councilmember Jarstad.
Yes.
Councilmember Dickinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Ewing.
Yes.
Councilmember Peter Shagan.
No.
Okay,
Passed.
motion passes 4-3. That's amendment number 3. And Councilmember Tadgett, you got another amendment?
My final amendment was to raise the cap to 75 total in Lake Stevens and not segregate the lake versus everyone else in the community. I don't necessarily like the lake having one jurisdiction and a certain amount of rules and regulations, and the rest of the community follow a different set of rules and regulations. I just see it as certain group of people feel like they shouldn't be held to the same standard as everybody else in the lake, in the community. We're supposed to be one community around the lake. And I feel like 75 still puts us at what, 1%, maybe 1.25%, when most communities are 15 who have been putting regulations on are significantly higher than that. Once again, I think Councilman Peter seconds, we really don't have an issue with this right now. We've got 23, 25. I'd hate to see everyone rush out and try to go get a permit just so they can secure what they have always thought they had a right to do. So for me, I'm looking at putting the number at 75. I don't think that still stops your corporations. I still like all the other security instruments we're putting in place, but I think that puts us all in the same position in the community. So that way, when issues do come up, it's not people on the lake or people on the outside. I want us to be all in the same boat together versus having one group of people versus two.
Okay, so you are in paragraph B3. So your motion would be to change B3 to strike 50 and replace with 75 and then strike the rest of the paragraph.
Yep.
That's the motion. Do I have a second? Do I have a second?
To facilitate discussion, I will second the motion.
Okay, I will open up the floor for discussion on striking in B3, 50 to 75, and then the rest of the paragraph.
I wholeheartedly agree with your reasoning for wanting to move in that direction. I also think that this is brand new and we don't know what we don't know. And ordinances are amended all the time. And so I think that we're not going to get this perfect tonight. And we have the opportunity to continue to amend it as we see how it plays out. I would support there not being a delineation between lakefront property and non-lakefront property for the reasons you stated. My friendly amendment would be to keep the number at 50 and revisit in 6 months what we're looking at, how many applicants we've had, whether we're still at 27 or 28, where those licenses are, and consider increasing the number depending on what happens over the next 6 months.
I would agree to your friendly motion. I think we should all be in this as a community together versus one demographic versus another, or one area versus another. So I would take your friendly amendment and say, let's do that.
Okay, so we're changing it from 75 to 50, striking the rest of the paragraph.
Yep.
That's your friendly amendment.
That
Are
is-
we all accepting of the friendly amendment?
Go ahead, you want to say
Or
we
do
need-
we need to require her to make an actual motion to the amendment?
The motion, the maker of the motion and the second.
Yeah, let's go ahead and, if you would make a motion.
No, I think we're good.
The maker of the motion has agreed to it, and the person who seconded his motion has, so we're
Yeah.
good.
Robert's rules, alive and wasn't. No.
Working out well for us.
You went way beyond my boundary on that. All right. I've read it once.
All
Okay.
right, we learned something.
We learned something new. So the new friendly motion on this is to go in paragraph B3, strike or keeping 50, but striking the rest of the paragraph.
No more than 10 of which.
Correct.
So we would alleviate the 10. of
Right,
which.
right. The rest of the paragraph reads, no more than 10 of which shall be within the waterfront residential zoning district.
That would be strict. Great. I think it's a great addition.
Okay, further discussion?
I would vote against this for a couple of reasons. I guess maybe 4 or 5 reasons, but I disagree that the lakefront property owners is the same as the rest of the community when you talk about land use and desirability. And coupled with the fact that the lakefront property owners, with the exception of maybe one little plat, has no protection for HOA or CCNRs. It's open game. The subcommittee, which was comprised of citizens, planning commission, a couple of city council members, came up with 30, of which we increased it to 50. And the reason behind the 30 was figuring 2 to 3 bedrooms per unit would equate to maybe 90 roughly units of hotel space. And that was their rationale for coming up with that number. We increased it to 50. So now we're already going up, and now we're going up to 75 with no restrictions.
We're not going up to 75.
Or 50, excuse me. But we are taking away the limit of the lakefront property, which potentially, I guess you could see all 50 of the lakefront property, potentially. So I kind of disagree with you, Councilmember Jorstad, in the sense that we can revisit this. This is a very difficult issue. And I don't think there's anybody on this council that wants to revisit this anytime soon. So unless we have a huge change of council members, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So I would not support changing what is in the existing ordinance 1136, I believe it is.
Just to respond.
Angie, can you get?
Yep, thank you.
Hard time here.
Whether we want to revisit this or not, I think it is our responsibility to ensure that we revisit this and that we have a schedule. This is going to have an impact on our community one way or the other. I think it is incumbent upon us to ensure that we are checking to see how this is being enforced, checking to see how this is impacting our constituents and our neighbors. I am willing to commit that we make sure to revisit this in a timely manner, whether or not we want to or not.
Make an amendment and add that language to the ordinance.
Great, happy to do it.
So
Go ahead.
I guess my concern, well, let me back up. So when we first discussed this, I actually voiced a similar concern about segmenting the lake separately. I don't, as much as I love that in principle, I think at the present time, there's no denying the lake is kind of a hot spot in our city. It's probably going to be disproportionately impacted because of the desirability. I could be in favor of not segregating, except for the fact that we just reduced the distance between STRs by half. So now to me, it seems kind of like a double whammy. We've allowed them to be closer together with that previous amendment, and now we're going to say all 50 could potentially be around the lake. That concerns me, as Councilmember Jorstad pointed out. This is new. We don't know what we don't know. My preference would be to kind of wade into this and see how things develop. And then if we need to adjust numbers, then we can. But I feel like this does create a more tenable concern for lakefront owners. So that's my thought.
My thought on this too is we have 5 or 6 people who have weighed in tonight who don't have on the lake, or, talk to several of the people who don't have on the lake. So you're already talking, taking probably 15 to 20 right off the top that probably can't be on the lake because they're going to apply for a permit. So I don't think, and if we're capping it, the reason for the cap is so that we can explore and see what happens in the next year. And I agree, we can relook at this, and we've said, hey, we can relook at this again, but a cap of 50 still puts us at less than 1% for our community. And it also, the 150 was meant for communities. And, if someone 7 houses down the road from me wants to have one, I think they should be able to have one too. It's not excessive. 50 in a community this big is not excessive, especially when we don't have one hotel. There's so many people who I've spoken to who have said, I've got families that had a fire, had a flood, they have nowhere to go. And by us limiting to 50, I think that number is small, to be honest, but I think the thought was, let's give it a chance. Let's see what the police can respond to. Let's see what it is before we go creating a bunch of legislation around something where there clearly hasn't been a significant issue, maybe 1 or 2. Let's give something a try and see if it does go around the lake. And then we could set a limit on that. Maybe we see that there's very few on the lake. But I say this is something that we can all fight together versus a group around the lake versus the whole community.
Any further discussion?
Yeah, so I'm going to weigh in on this again. There is a difference between lakefront properties by our zoning, and they pay a significant amount more in stormwater fees and in their property taxes. And I don't agree with you, Marcus, on maybe we'll get 50 on the lake. Once the horse leaves the stable, it's really hard to shut the gate. So if it happens, we're not going to get them back. It's just, unless we come back as a council and say, okay, now we're banning them all. It's the only way you're going to get rid of them at that point. So I don't agree with the amendment as it stands right now. I still think we should be 50 and 10 the way we put it in here for the last several months or the last few weeks, I guess. 50 was the last few weeks. So I can't vote for that amendment.
Further discussion? Okay, with that, I'm gonna call for a roll call vote, and the vote is to change B3 to strike the wordage past the comma on 50. Keep it as 50, but strike the rest of the paragraph. Is what you're voting. You're up, Kelly.
All right, Councilmember Jorstad,
Yes.
Councilmember Tagent,
Yes.
Councilmember Peter Shagan,
No.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ewing. Sorry, I didn't get that.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Councilmember Daughtry,
No.
Councilmember Donahue,
No.
Okay.
it's still passed, yep.
Okay, that's amendment number 4. We have, we're not taking any questions on that, and this is just a discussion within the council. Any other further amendments for this motion?
Just bring up the Councilmember Peter saying, let's put that we will revisit this. I mean, I don't want to revisit it anytime soon, but I think we had talked about visiting it in a year or
So
whatever.
I'm not sure we need to make an amendment. I think that we can get with Russ, we can put it on the just a review in the fall after the summer. Maybe in October workshop, we can take a look at it.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Okay, I'll ask again for any further amendments. Okay, we will go back to the original motion. The original motion on the floor is to pass ordinance 1139 short-term rentals. Is there any further discussion on the original motion? Hearing no further discussion on the motion, I'll call for a roll call vote.
Councilmember,
We need a motion.
We need a motion. On the original motion has been amended. So the original motion is off the table. It is now, what is before the council is the
Amended.
yes, with the 3 amendments.
yeah,
Okay, so what I need then is a motion. Pass the original motion plus the 3 amendments.
so there
So
was,
moved.
okay.
Okay.
Greg, there was already a first and a second for the motion, original motion,
Right.
but that's now,
Right.
okay. I'm sorry, go ahead. Councilmember Jorstad, are you first?
So I've got a so moved on passing the original motion and the 3 amendments. As amended. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, I have a second. I'll open up the floor to any discussion.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I want to first acknowledge that this has been a long, arduous process, and as painful as it's been, I'm also very proud of the work that our planning commission has done. I'm proud of the number of citizens who have felt passionately enough to share with us their concerns, their areas of support. I think that we've learned a lot through this process. I think the citizens group also brought some great perspectives that we hadn't considered before. This is not an ordinance that anyone in this room supports 100%. This is an ordinance that has many different perspectives and is trying to balance the needs of property owners, the needs of neighbors, the needs of people visiting our city. And it is a compromise of many, many perspectives. And it's not perfect. I would put forth that it is an honest compromise. It is an earnest compromise. And that none of us are 100% pleased with it. I would urge us to move forward and pass this ordinance and dedicate ourselves to reviewing what we learn in passing this ordinance. And I want to thank everyone who had a voice in creating this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay, then I'll ask for a roll call.
Councilmember Peter Shaken,
Aye.
Councilmember Ewing,
Yes.
Councilmember Daughtry,
Aye.
Councilmember Jorstad,
Aye.
Councilmember Tagent,
I,
Councilmember Donahue,
Aye.
Councilmember Dickinson,
Aye.
unanimous.
Okay, with that, we have an SCRO. Let's move on to action items, which is the resolutions. Press ready.
Okay, I will keep this short for the council. I'll give our crowd a minute to move out. Go on to my staff report.
We need to take a couple minute break for Justin. Yeah, why don't we take 3 minutes?
Just do it alphabetically every time.
Yeah.
Good work.
Right.
Okay, are we ready to go, Mayor?
Yeah, let's get going. I would ask the council to, we're gonna go, probably, we have our council rules of trying to stay within 2 hours. We're gonna more than likely go over that. Is there any issue?
Do we think we're gonna wrap it up within the next 10-15?
Well, we've got this next action item, which is the fees resolution. We need to discuss council break dates and then look at next week's agenda, and then we have an executive session. Anya?
Probably 15 minutes, but that can be moved. It's nothing that's pressing.
But if we move it and we don't have a workshop next week, then we move it.
That's okay. It's, like I said, it's not pressing.
Okay.
I would like to work to be done by 8, the latest.
Okay,
So I think we would need to move the exec session, I think.
all right, let's see how we do here. We're okay with suspending rules?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So Russ, you're up.
Okay, first of all, thank you, council, for working through the STR ordinance. Now we're to the next phase of that, which is passing a new fees resolution to set the fee for applications and renewals. We've talked about it a couple of different meetings, the rationale of the fee that's proposed. So you have resolution 2023-05 before you tonight that would set those revised fees, including, again, the initial application fee and renewal fee for short-term rentals.
I'd like to move that we adopt resolution 2023-05.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a motion and a second. And is there any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Okay.
Is there a way that we can have code enforcement have a fee for hours worked on the code enforcement? I noticed there's nothing like that in our fee schedule, and Councilmember Peter Sagan brought up that if we had a higher fee on the STRs, that it would help to cover code enforcement and those kinds of things. My opinion of the fees, I've always had this opinion, you've heard me say it several times, is that sometimes our fees are onerous and not within keeping of or services rendered. In other words, if it's going to only take 2 hours and you still have to pay $500, then we just made, $300 more than it actually cost. And it just cost the citizens more money. If it goes over, then we only made $500 and it cost us more to make it happen. I have several other instances of our fees that I have always been opposed to. But they're not germane to this particular discussion because it's about the STR fee. So I am more inclined to, at the beginning of this, I said something about the 250. I'm more inclined to stay with the 500 for now. But I also want to have some maybe discussion in a workshop come up that talks about all of our fee structure and how that might be better done, if there's a better way to do it.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, council.
Gene, let's talk about breaks.
Great, thank you much.
We don't have any because we may not have a meeting. Thank you.
We talked about this a couple of times that the break we took last year was a bit extensive. And so we looked at the calendar and we're proposing our last meeting this year before our council break be on July 18th. And we would resume on September 5th. That works around different events we may have in the community, any holidays. Does that work?
Gene, is that enough? Or is that a good enough time that we, like, if there's some kind of pressing thing that we'll be able to work through, or is that, you feel good about that for the councils?
I do, and that is our recommendation to staff and the mayor.
Great. That works for me if that's the recommendation.
Me too. That sounds good.
I would like to remind council of the discussion that we had at the retreat, that during the break time that we just be mindful of the fact that it's also break time for staff as well. And that we are mindful that we're not during that time asking for extra work to be done by staff, because my understanding is staff also plan their vacations during that time. And I think we just want to try to wrap up business that we have as much as possible.
And there's Aquafest in there
By
too.
that July 18th date.
Glad you brought it up. 'Cause I didn't want to have to do that.
Do the other planning commission, arts commission, and are they taking that break also?
I don't believe so. I think it's just council.
That they could choose to, depending on what they have on their agenda.
So I guess that's kind of why I asked that, because I'll just use planning commission as an example. If they have something ongoing that may or may not be important, I mean, you know, he may be asking something of staff.
Sure.
Because he's a liaison, so I'm just.
Well,
it
and
would
and also staff couldn't take a break. The staff that are supporting planning commission.
No,
they could take a
exactly.
break.
Right, but I just.
Yeah, I don't think it's a question of asking some small stuff. It's,
Okay.
it's doing a new comp plan that we would have an issue. If you ask us to.
Just being mindful of the fact that it's a break for us, but it may be a break for city
Right.
staff too. Just kind of
Yeah.
being mindful of, you know, of that during that time.
Yeah.
Good point.
Steve, any input?
No.
Okay, great. So we've got good guidance there, and we do not have enough topics to do a workshop next week, so there will not be a workshop next week.
I think we were gonna confirm that tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
Is that right?
That's the way it's looking tonight. Let me just check with staff and I'll send you all an email to confirm that, but it's not looking like we're gonna have one.
Okay, perfect. And then I think we have time for the exec session, if you guys are okay with that.
Let's do it.
15 minutes. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and clear the room. And Nathan, there's not gonna be any action, so just so you know. And if we can clear the room and we'll do a 15-minute executive session on.
Collective bargaining and we'll return at 8:17.
Correct. Okay, we are back in, after our executive session, there's no action, taking a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Have a great night.